All right, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Women in Medicine webinar, titled "How to Get What You Want and Need as a Woman in Science and Medicine." And just to give you a quick introduction for myself, I'm Filiz Korkmaz. I'm an assistant professor in microbiology and immunology at the University of Iowa. I've been here for approximately a year and studying innate immunity and immunometabolism in the airways during pneumonia.
And hi, everyone. I will be joining Feliz. I'm Erica Orsini. I'm an assistant professor of medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. And my research interest is also in innate immunity and lung injury during pneumonia. And I am absolutely honored to be introducing our all-star panelists. Today, we have Dr. Irina Petrache. She's the Chief of Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine at National Jewish Health in Denver, Colorado. She's a professor of medicine, associate vice president for faculty development, the Wallowick Chair in COPD research, as well as our most recent former past president of the American Thoracic Society. We have Dr. Janet Lee, who is also chief of Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine. She's at Washington University in St. Louis. She is the Selma and Herman Selden Distinguished Professor in Medicine, as well as a professor of pathology and immunology. And we have Dr. Susan Rehm. She is a professor of medicine at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine, vice chair of infectious disease, executive director of physician health, as well as associate chief of staff. And uniquely, she is a board certified coach at the Cleveland Clinic Center for Excellence in Coaching and Mentoring. So we are really excited for these panelists to tell us how to get what we want and need as women in medicine and science.
Yes, exactly. And again, thank you all for agreeing to be part of our panel. It's really an honor to have such distinguished leaders in science and medicine here. And I know, just to kind of open it up for some general and introductory questions. And how did you get to where you are? If each one of you could just give a brief kind of overview of your story of how you got to the positions you are currently in.
I guess I'll start in the order of introduction. The honor is all mine for being part of this distinguished panel. So yes, how did I get here? I think my pathway was not unlike many of your pathways, and in that it took a lot of focus and hard work, as well as an attitude of positivity and trust in the system. A lot of mentors that were peppered along my pathway and helped me at the right place, right time. And yes, I was primarily guided by opportunities to get better, to learn more, and to give back.
And I'll just follow up with what Dr. Petrarchi said. I think that's absolutely correct. I would say that, a lot of it is sort of a personal um, understanding of what you want to do and what brings you passion in your career and meaning. I think that that's very important. Sometimes it's a little bit unclear in the initial phase of your journey because you may not have experienced a lot, but I do think that at some point you'll kind of gravitate towards one area and really find a true passion and meaning, whether it be clinical medicine, education, or science. I think opportunities come and arise, and taking full advantage of those opportunities is important. And then I think I would like to echo what Dr. Petrarchi said in terms of being open to growing, maybe stretching yourself a little bit is also an important I think, thing to keep in mind.
I agree. Dr. Rehm?
Thanks, Dr. Lee. And I think, it's interesting, looking back, I quite frankly could never have imagined where I ended up when I was starting. And I am probably the most clinically oriented person in this panel. That's really where my home was, and I grew into education and administrative kinds of roles through following my passion and keeping myself open to opportunities, both within the organization and outside the organization. And I think that one thing that happens, especially early in a career, is that we are so busy, whether it's with clinical work, with our research, with all of the other demands that life brings to us, that we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to take the time to think about what's most important to us.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to direct this next question at you, Dr. Rehm, but I would also be interested if our other panelists have comments. So what is a professional coach, and how can women in science and medicine benefit from having one?
Well, a professional coach is a person who is going to be a thought partner with you as you go along the way. And it's really important, and I think we're all still learning about this, to really think about the different roles that people play. Coach is one, mentorship is another, teaching is another, sponsorship is another. And then there's this concept of board of directors that we all kind of identify along the way, either formally or informally. But I think it's most important to distinguish and define coaching as opposed to mentoring, because I think that sometimes the terms get used interchangeably. And the really down and dirty distinguishing characteristics of mentoring is that it is telling. It is working with someone who is an expert in an area that you're interested in, who can help to guide you along the way, as opposed to a coach who works through asking questions, through bringing out what's most important, what are the values, what are your motivations, and then partnering with you to figure out how you're going to get there.
That is so well put. It's hard to add anything. As a former athlete, I would also add that I think of a coach as someone who can keep you accountable, especially in light of how busy we are and how quickly we can get distracted by either new shiny objects or deadlines or someone else's kind of emergencies that are imparted upon us. And a coach can help you stay the course and prioritize. And just like in athletics, they are not going to run the race for you, but they are essential even for outstanding athletes who are world champions. They still need coaches for this reason.
I would also say, I don't have a professional coach or, have been, at least that I'm aware of, a coach to others. But I would say that in situations where I think some issue arises or some conflict that needs to be resolved, where I've had help, and when I'm reflecting back on situations where I've learned a lot, these people were, served as coaches. And I think that that's a very valuable component that every step of the way is quite helpful in your career. It may not be a professional coach that but I think reflecting back on sort of my journey, I think some of these individuals were sort of coaches.
Yeah, no, I sort of agree with you in that, in terms of having like a professional coach or just, people in your life that could sort of serve in that role is extremely helpful. And certainly it's early phase, when I'm constantly kind of running around and not really always certain on what should be my priority. I think that would be really helpful. So I guess one of the questions is also how did you, again, kind of directed at Dr. Rehm, how did you get involved with professional coaching, and how could somebody, if they're interested, get involved?
Thank you. And it's interesting. You use the word should, and that's something that we pay attention to in coaching, because that implies that someone else perhaps is having expectations, and part of the coaching is to uncover what your own expectations are for yourself. So it's a little bit different lens, so to speak. And I got involved about 15 years ago formally, when I was the executive director for Physician Health, and talking with people who might have the traditional health problems, but might also have just stumbles along the way in their career, or look at career guidance, residents, fellows, medical students who are looking for career guidance, or people who are mid-career and later who wanted to step back and think a little bit about where they are and where they were going. Now, I didn't call it coaching. I had two very good friends who were at the time setting up a coaching and mentoring program within the organization, and they said, "You're coaching." And I said, "What?" I had no idea. But this idea that I wasn't dispensing answers, but helping that individual in a kind of a self-discovery mode, I think was what was distinguished it. So I started out with our own internal coaching and mentoring program, and then went on to get a certificate at the Weatherhead School of Management and got additional training, and it's all ongoing beyond there. But that's how I say I backed into it. Maybe it put a name on something that was native to the way I interact with people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rehm. And I'm sure many of us feel like at different times we're informally coaching and being coached. So that's very interesting to formally kind of pursue that. I think our next question is, let's say you have a junior person who stops by your office. What is the best way and the most persuasive way that they can convince you to give them what they want and need for their career?
Could I start? I look for passion. I do look for, what is it? Do they have an idea of what it is that they want? Clarity. And I think that's very helpful for someone if they want to engage sort of an, a dialogue about, their career development and where they want to go, and how I could help. That's very helpful, right? So I think that that's what I would look for. And some people are very organized, and some people have very, very clear sort of ideas, and possibly very concrete ideas, and some maybe less so. But I think for all these people, I just want to see whether or not there's passion, a clarity of where they want to go, how I could help, and what are those asks of me? Yeah.
I can add to that part of my job is to do that, both as division chief as well as, I'm involved with a D32, so mentoring fellows in research. That includes career development. And we have a lot of women who are in our program, and then in my capacity as faculty development. So I'm actually more in a situation of making sure that everyone who needs advice or some sort of an input or a partner to brainstorm about where they need to go, that they have access, and that I identify who needs this. Some people may not mount the courage or have the insight to knock at my door. And that's sometimes part of the challenge. How do I tactfully or adequately at the right time approach these individuals? And it takes a lot of communication with their mentors and all the other entourage that Dr. Rehm mentioned that we're now surrounded by, that's put in place to help us, or we should put in place to help us. And having communication and some sort of checkpoints to identify those needs. I am striving to find those and learn every day about what they could be.
It was interesting when I was transitioning from fellowship to at being an attending. I had embarked on a project as a fellow, which was establishing a home intravenous antibiotic therapy program that led me to not only identify individuals within the organization, but also national people who were involved in that area. And I would not have labeled it this way at the time, but I did end up with some incredible external mentors, content experts, people who were familiar with not only that area, but with administration, with infectious diseases in general. And it was through following those kinds of interests that really opened up a whole lot of doors too. So, one thing I would bear in mind for people who are looking for mentors is to don't restrict yourself, especially these days. When I was doing it, there was no Zoom. Let's put it that way. But now it's a whole different ball game. Think contacts that you make at national meetings, at regional and local meetings, things like that. If you have an interest area or think you might have an interest area, get to know the people who are working in that area.
I remember that part of the training I received at ELAM was how, as a person seeking mentorship, how to approach a mentor or a future individual who might help you. And that is to just make an appointment and state that you are interested in the same field, or that you were advised by your supervisor or division chief or whoever to seek contacts from established, the best in the field, and everybody likes to be called the best and to be sought after. So that alone can open a door.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with you, and that's, kind of expanding your network, I think is really helpful. And the ATS has been really, critical for me in that, throughout these interactions. And now that we have with the mentorship program, and now that Zoom is sort of much more commonplace, it's been made it a lot easier and a lot, it's really facilitated, an expanded network of interactions. But not to get into a little bit more instead of the nitty-gritty stuff, like in terms of, negotiating the things that you want with either within your position or a different position for like raises and promotions and career advancement. Is there any tips and tricks that you all could, provide us that have helped you throughout your sort of career advancement?
I'll start again, I guess. I don't know if that tricks, but tips maybe. So what helps me even now, because I do have moments of doubt and despair and sometimes, yeah, the imposter syndrome and so on, they never go away. I don't know, maybe I need to learn those tricks and tips to have a forever confident attitude. But I think finding this confidence is important. So when I do have these weak moments, I try to go through both visualization and as well as self-affirmation, but backed up by data. So I do like to keep track that I have various ways of record keeping my achievements. And then I look over them, and they are facts and data that I actually have what it takes to achieve what I want to achieve. So that, and again, visualization practice, for example, before I go to an important meeting or an interview or have an important talk, etc. I do all this and I practice a lot. And so that's one thing, how to build confidence and hopefully bring it back when needed. The second is to stay, to put things in perspective by being humble. So I remind myself every day when I feel overwhelmed about how much I have to do, how lucky I am to be able to do this, to first of all, to have the health to be able to do my job. Second, to have a job. Third, to have such a wonderful job. So reminding myself how lucky I am it's my secret actually for everyday power.
Those are really great advice from Dr. Petrache. I would say in terms of, negotiation, I would probably do your homework and be prepared. So if there is an ask or a specific ask, I think it would be very helpful, say, I'm just saying like promotion. That's a very common one. Prepare your CV. Look up the guidelines for the Office of Faculty Affairs. Read what your school is, sort of the metrics for that, and ensure that it's organized and clear. And then I think what Dr. Petrache is to visualize the conversation and be prepared in terms of what are the 3 points that you would like to convey. I think that's very helpful. And the ask obviously should also take into account the other person's perspective, where they're coming from, what you might encounter. So I think that's being open to other people's perspective, but also being prepared is really important, especially if there are specific goals that you want to achieve or convey in that meeting. And then also looking outside of the institution, let's say for promotion, what are sort of the standards, right, across, if that's available, talking to folks, your peers, as well, if you feel that you are someone who is ready for a promotion. I think confidence, that's also very important, but I think data actually speaks for itself. Many times, when we look at sort of CVs and making sure faculty are on the right track, there are some people who don't promote, are not very self-promoting, and but the evidence speaks for itself. So, I would imagine that your chief or chair would be cognizant of that, but it doesn't hurt to gently remind them.
It's funny you should mention the 3 points, because that was something that I got to in the annual review conversation. I decided that I was going to go in every time and not 3 asks, but simply kind of 3 highlights. And part of this came from a time when I was having an annual review, and this was on the administrative part of my job. And so I was talking to the chief of staff and kind of paused for breath. And he said, well, what do you have to show for all this? And I was like, oh my God, we are not on the same wavelength, number one. Number two, I need some help in figuring out what deliverables are relevant to him. Because maybe I'm providing the answer to a different question than he's asking, so to speak. So kind of a long way to say that I think in these conversations, whether it's promotion, whether it's review, whether it's a mentoring conversation, trying to align values is extremely important. And it gets to emotional intelligence competencies. So the 4 competencies are knowing yourself, managing yourself, knowing others, and managing others. And while knowing yourself is probably the biggest overall predictor of success, that ability to manage others or interact with others, be able to tell your value or to expound on your value to others is probably the workplace skill that is most used and probably underappreciated going forward. And I think that's particularly important in your early and mid career, is just kind of, how how is this going to help my division? How is this going to help the organization? How is this going to help me? And how can we align all of those kinds of things?
So if I may just add something, it seems like I had the right answer to the wrong question. So sorry, I missed the part of the question specifically about promotion and advancement. And I cannot add anything better than what was already said by my colleagues. But I want to add one thing about getting promoted outside the academic rank conversation. And as I became a senior member of faculty, once, when you're in the earlier and mid part of your career, it seems like getting to professor is kind of the ultimate goal. And, once you get there, then based on our phenotypes, most of the phenotypes of individuals in academia, they never stop wanting to get better, to learn, to contribute. And then you ask yourself, so what's next? What can I do differently, more, better? How can I advance? And I think that's the harder part, because institutions have now been prompted and responded appropriately to provide very clear criteria for promotion. And just like in school, you kind of know what you're being judged by. So the guide is pretty clear. You have to publish papers, they have to be answer important questions and get funded, etc., teach. So all those metrics are more and more clear. However, as you go beyond that, it becomes a little bit less concrete, less granular in the guidance. How do you get promoted, for example, in a leadership position or another leadership position? Which career track should you pursue to give back? So these are, I found now more challenging, and identifying exactly what you want to do. I think it's important. And again, coaching, etc., becomes crucial at this stage.
Thank you. And Dr. you mentioned a subset of people who are not very good at self-promotion. And I think a lot of people, including myself, can kind of relate to that and the idea of like updating your chair on your progress or setting up a meeting and asking for things like money and time can give some people like a stress response. So is there any advice for how to be self-promoting in a way that's, not obnoxious, and maybe start some of that communication with your chair if you haven't been like meeting regularly, or just to open those channels of communication outside of like your APR?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I think I would say that I'm very cognizant of that because I tend not to be like a, particularly verbose person, and tend to be a little bit more, I guess, introspective in many ways. And so, what I actually did early on in my career was I sought a mentor outside of my institution. It was actually at ATS. And I don't know if you know Sharon Rounds, but she was my mentor. We meet for the last 25 years, every year, to have lunch. And it's been such a wonderful, friendship and mentorship. I really value that kind of interaction. And I think just observing sort of somebody who is not from the same institution, similar interests, not identical, and is a senior distinguished member and a woman. And so I think that was extremely helpful to have role models and then to observe sort of what they have done and how some of the things or attributes that kind of are things that you sort of find similar, you take on. So one of the things that I think I did learn early on was, if I can't self-promote, it's difficult for me. I make sure and I prepare all the documents. And that's what I talked about, the CVs. And we have things like for clinicians, a CTIR, and make sure that those are organized. And then I would regularly meet with my chief and say, could I get some feedback? Are there things that are gaps or things that I could improve upon? But I always came with certain, specific goals or asks. And I think that helped build sort of my repertoire confidence over time, and also established a way for me to at least communicate my accomplishments in an authentic way. Like, it's very difficult for me, and I think many of you in the audience probably have the same issue, for me to say, oh, this is what it's just not going to work. But I do, have things that I'm very proud of and things that, I really work hard towards. I also think that in this process, I have also been able to contribute to other people's careers and have, I'd like to think at least given them advice that's truly meaningful to me and what I've learned, the mistakes that I've made, and kind of pass along sort of, my experience to see if that helps. So I do think one is look for mentors outside of your institution, find role models also that you can sort of feel comfortable sort of modeling. And then three is learn from, some of the things that they did right, and maybe some of the things that they didn't do so right. So that's what I have.
To build on that, I'd like to introduce a concept called coaching up. And it is an opportunity for someone who may be speaking to someone who is the next level up in the hierarchy to interact with them through, in part, asking questions. So in a career conversation. I've done such and such. I'm interested in this. How do you see, what advice would you give someone in my position? How do you see this fitting with whatever? Engage their expertise, even if it's a one-off, even if it's not a formal mentorship, even if it's in an evaluative setting, a annual review. Hey, and I'll make one other brief point about while I'm at it. I think chairs are very accustomed to people coming to them with problems, and they very much get into a fix-it mode. Going to a chair or someone in the hierarchy with ideas, with energy, with what do I want to do, as opposed to here's what I don't want to do, really flips the conversation a lot. And you can do this, outside of work as well. But coming to an agreement on, where goals may be and how that might play out is really, it's actually kind of fun. Takes some of the threat out of it. And I think it also kind of allows what we were talking about earlier, is that combination of humility and being willing to be objective about oneself in terms of one's accomplishments.
Hard to contribute more to the answer to this question. I think that I agree fully with what was said, and being on both sides, I think the one mistake that I've done and I've learned from is to not do my homework about how the person that I was negotiating with what preferred to communicate and communication style.
Yeah, I can ask a question. And I think this gets a little bit at Katya's question about, women rising into leadership. And something that I've noticed being a little further along in the process is that I see a lot of women choosing not to take leadership roles. And so multiple of you mentioned the importance of understanding what you want. And so it's been interesting to me to feel like it's not that women aren't getting the jobs, but often they don't put themselves forward. And so I'm wondering if you could speak about sort of how do you discern what you want? Is it through leadership courses like ELAM? Is it through a good book you'd recommend? Do you need one-on-one coaching to sort of figure out, what your next game plan is?
It's interesting you say that. I actually didn't really want to be a chief for most of my career. I was very focused on my research. But I came to a point, and maybe it was because I was getting old, or I don't know, reaching middle age, who knows? But, and probably precipitated post-COVID, and also my children sort of leaving the nest, and there were some opportunities that came up, and I thought about it more seriously. I think you're right. Women don't put themselves up for leadership because they have many duties outside of their careers. And so I do think that is one point. And second is many women feel like, well, I have so many other things going on in my life. I have to take care of these issues. And that's kind of how I felt. And actually, I had a friend who I spoke with a lot, not in medicine, and kind of talk these things through before I really decided, yeah, you know what? This is what I really want to do with my career. I want to give back to the field. I love medicine, clinical medicine, but I also love science. I love young people. How do I give back? And this would be great. And one of the things that I had to resolve for myself, and is through this process of, I guess, self-discovery and talking through, and perhaps that person was a coach in some ways. I just didn't know it. And that was really trying to figure out where I was personally, with my family, with my spouse, all of those things. Was that something that I could take on? So yes, could I have done it earlier in my career? I think that's a very personal decision, but I do think that, yes, I think women should think about it earlier on in their careers and then talk to others and, really reflect. I think goes back to what Dr. Rehm said about self-awareness and trying to figure out what it is that you want and talking through things with other people you trust, is a good thing.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, if there's one message, I think that to take time to step back and think about who you are. What are your values? What are your motivations? What are your goals? I think, I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek's golden circle. The why is in the middle, and there's how and what around there. And I'm a firm believer that if the why is solid, the how and the what will work their way out. And it may be that not everybody's how and what is going to be a chief position or a deanship or a fill in the blank. That the how and the what may or may not be a title. The most important thing is to have a solid why. And that is something that developmental coaching can create a space for that discussion.
Excellent points. Thank you both for that direction. I guess since we're sort of getting towards the end of the hour here, I was kind of thinking about along the lines of, the American Thoracic Society and how we might utilize this in a way to take advantage of some of our resources and how can one of us potentially become the future president of ATS?
You definitely can, is my response. And I think a lot of it is, the reason why I'm involved in ATS personally is the many friendships that I've developed over the years and the colleagues that I've grown to know from many different institutions. It's so wonderful. And I really value that. It's very meaningful for me in my career to not only meet new people each year, but also reestablish and rekindle some of the wonderful friendships that I've had over many, many years. So I think that's of great value at ATS. And if you want that kind of leadership position, seek out, conversations with Dr. Petrache, other presidents, and get their insight and perspective and learn from them and hear what they have to say. I think it is a wonderful, wonderful, network that you really should take advantage of.
And I'll add, take advantage of the opportunity to volunteer, be on a committee, be visible in a way that people can see what you're doing, who you are, how you operate. And committee work is a great way to do that.
I will try to guess what the question was about ATS and
It was how to become president, Irina. So you're an expert in the field.
And this is me being resilient because I just wanted to jump into an ice bucket. So the way was just say yes in a reasonable way, ask myself how I can help and how I can get people together and pay it forward and partner. So I think being open to this will always open doors. The ATS is an organization that welcomes new blood, new faces, new ideas, especially coming from a diverse membership, and having diverse voices is so cherished. So there is absolutely no impediment to advancing in ATS except being too shy or too busy. And obviously knowing when and what to say at the right time, and trying to work with others, just like on any other professional organization or a team that needs together to achieve consensus. I think it's very important as well. So learning that, trying to think individuals who wanted to advance and maybe did not achieve the positions that they were keen on achieving. And this is all I can think of, individuals who were perhaps not willing to understand the process, the system, the stakeholders, the priorities, and maybe needed a little bit more maturity to get there. And but everyone else who I've grown with together in ATS since fellowship, I think they all had their voices heard and they contributed, including myself. There was no secret. I didn't go to take special courses, how to become president of ATS, but it's just working hard and being positive and figuring out what was needed when.
And I think we have an audience question.
My name is Tu, and I just have a question in that a little bit of background. I stayed on to become a professor, an assistant professor at the institution that I trained at. And so, being able to join professionally and join the ranks of these professors that trained me, of course, I have a lot of imposter syndrome. So the question for me is always, when I try to go for opportunities, I always am worried, am I trying to do something that might be a little bit too over ambitious and then unfortunately under deliver? And that just makes me really nervous. I know you talked a lot about knowing when is the right time, but how do we really know to assess that? Unfortunately, it's like constantly this cycle of, am I good enough? Is it, if I'm not good enough, would they judge me differently? Or, hey, maybe you're at that place where you should try to challenge yourself more.
Well, too, one thing I'll say is who could help you? Who could be an ear for you to discuss all of those things and allow you to kind of think through it? I'm not expecting an answer right now, but simply to say that one of the things that happens, I think, to all of us, and maybe to women more than men, is that we isolate. We feel like I've got to be able to figure this out. And the reality is a conversation with a trusted friend, it doesn't even necessarily need to be in medicine, or a colleague or someone you train with or whatever. Talk about it and see what those ideas come out. And I would say the other thing is we all try stuff that doesn't necessarily work out. That is part of growth and that is part of advancement too. Kind of like, well, it's not the same as getting a paper rejected, but it is one of those things that not everything is going to work out no matter what. But I would really encourage you to talk to other people too, to see what their experience has been.
I would
Thank
also
you.
add to that, a little discomfort is what you need to grow. I do think too much comfort or holding back because you don't feel like you're ready. I think a little bit of growth requires that kind of leaning in and a little bit of discomfort. And over time, and you know, you will gain sort of a feeling of more accomplishment as actually your accomplishments grow. So after a while, I think the more you try, the more you'll succeed.
That's so true about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I have to add 2 points. One is that there's more and more women in leadership. And it's easier now for, I think, for the younger generation to identify, to visualize, to say, oh, I think I have the same traits. That person looks like me. I have the same achievements, the same training. So that should give everyone confidence, because people who look like you, who have the same training, have made it. So you're not any different. And secondly, a trick that I use, I put myself in uncomfortable situations through either going skiing in very bad conditions and having wind on my face, and my face hurts from the snow hitting my face and so on. So this exercising a lot, they give me the strength to be uncomfortable at work as well. Well, if I survive that, bring it on, kind of a thing. So that's my trick. It may not work for people for whom athleticism or extreme weather exposure is not a thing, but it's a trick.
Thank you so much for all your advice and insight.
Yes, thank you again. So it looks like we're coming up on the hour. And I just, again, wanted to thank you, all 3 of our panelists and everyone here for joining us today for this really excellent and insightful session on getting what you want as a woman in medicine and science. I know I learned a lot, and I can definitely agree with you on that. Growth comes with a little bit of discomfort as well. And I did want to also, solicit some ideas for, if anybody has any insight onto what might be interesting for any of our upcoming webinars on women in medicine and science, please feel free to message Erica and I, and we will be happy to discuss it with you. And again, thank you all for joining us today. I don't know if Erica wants to conclude with anything.
I agree. Thank you so much to our speakers. I feel like this kind of content, if it helps support women advance in science and medicine, is just absolutely invaluable. So grateful that you guys were willing to share that with everyone. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. Thank you.